Hi everyone, my name is Selena and welcome back to Beyond Borders Teaching. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode. On last week's episode, we discussed my wins, my triumphs, and the various ways I would have thrived while teaching abroad. As previously mentioned, in this episode, we'll be talking about more practical aspects of the journey of getting here and all the different things that would have taken place to this current point. Thank you for tuning in. And at this point, I'd like to remind you to kindly like, follow, subscribe, comment, and stay tuned for more. Thank you. On this episode, I wanted to give you all a little background information more into who I am, my history as an educator in my home country, and I guess more aspects for you all to know a bit about my journey before becoming an international teacher. So I would have taught for 12 years in my home country, and this is my third year. I'm finishing teaching in the US. So I have 15 years experience altogether. Teaching in my home country, of course, was definitely amazing. Teaching was definitely my calling, even though I would have explained to you all the many different career choices I would have chosen before deciding on teaching. As well as teaching back home, I would say I'm a teacher by day and a baker by night, because I also got to fulfill my passion of having my own business and get to express myself creatively because I also was a pastry chef. So on my weekends, my free time, I would be able to facilitate various orders. I had many clientele. I really got to express myself creatively and bring joy and happiness to so many families and friends, and it's something that filled me with great pride. I remember growing up, my mom at first, she didn't take it seriously when I, just starting to try out doing cakes. I started doing cakes when I was probably like 15, 16. My mom was always in the kitchen, always making something. She was the best cook imaginable. And for whatever reason, I took to doing desserts. Now, my mom would make simple desserts as well, but I found a great passion and wanted to dive more into knowing about different desserts. At that point in time, in the early stages, in my teenage years, my inspiration at the time was Buddy Valastro, the cake boss. Maybe you all know him. And from there, I just, went and take various courses into learning pastry arts. So I taught in the day, which was my passion and still is. And I would often take orders on the weekend and stuff to do cakes. I had a thriving registered business, and I had great clients who always would recommend people to me, and it really filled me with how my business was able to spread in my home country just by word of mouth, because I always believe in quality. So I would always use the best quality ingredients, and I always give more than I was supposed to, because that's how I am, I guess. So that was a wonderful experience. And of course, in coming to the US, I had to close my business for that period of time to make this choice here to teach in the US. So just a little background into me. At home, I got to teach and bake, but of course, coming to the US, I could only focus on teaching, which of course, I missed that creative aspect, as well as, of course, doing my cakes back home also helped with income, versus here, I can only focus on just teaching. So it's my sole source of income. Whereas home, of course, I was able to be a business owner and a teacher. But no regrets. I am enjoying the experience and, of course, living in the present moment. So for this part of the episode, I'd like to discuss what brought me here. It was COVID 2020. And of course, COVID, of course, would have caused a lot of changes globally. I remember I had contracted COVID. That would have been in 2020 or 2021. I think it was 2021. And at the time, of course, with contracting COVID, you had the stipulation of, at the time, I think 10 to 21 days, I was quarantined to my household. And I felt so very sick. And not being able to make that extra income from my cake business really started to dawn on me that, if for whatever reason I get ill or I can't do my cakes anymore, what would be my position financially with just my teaching job? Because teaching alone was never sufficient to cover my bills. So I had to start to think of other ways. And at that time, I was praying, I need to figure out something else other than my cakes to bring in extra income. Because, of course, as much as I love doing cakes and it is my passion, it is something I love doing. I love the smiles it brings to people's faces. I love to express myself, as I said, creatively. And just the whole complexity of behind it, like making macarons, like just all these scientific things and the numerous ways in which I can shape and mold and develop things and mix flavors and put different combinations together is something I'm truly passionate about, as you could probably tell. Um, but I had to make the decision to do something that would be more financially beneficial to me. So I prayed, as I said, and a friend of mine, my husband's sister, actually sent me the possibility of teaching abroad, with some news article or something she saw. So at the time, this is when I had COVID and I already started to think of, I need to figure out another way to supplement my income. My sister-in-law would have sent me the information. At the time, I was like, okay, maybe this is not true. Should I believe it? And I didn't really pay it much attention. Then my best friend, he would have then sent me the same information by the same sponsor. So at that point, I was like, well, okay, it's two persons sending this information now. So maybe I should, check into it. Maybe it's a sign. And that's where it started from. So I applied, I got called. Then the program would have had several interviews with me. Sometimes I was interviewed by 5 different persons asking various questions. I had several courses to do. I also had to do several lesson plans for the program. So as of March, after the program, I would have went through and passed all their lesson plans and interviews. Then they would have started to put my resume out there. So I was then interviewed by various principals within the United States. But I was only interviewed by one principal, and I accepted the job at that time for a 4th grade position teaching here in the US. So from that point, the journey began of my sponsors placing me with someone called a local advisor, who is a fellow international teacher who's already in your particular county or city or state. And that person would have started to reach out to me via email, WhatsApp, to start to ask questions as to who would I be coming to the US with, what are my needs in terms of where would I like to stay, my budget, telling me about vehicles, sending vehicles to me, and that sort of thing. So we would have made contact, and when I came to the US, I would have been placed in a hotel, as I believe I mentioned before, to start the orientation process. For that orientation process of 4 days, we would have had various meetings, school visits, various group work, and then we had fun stuff in between. Like I went to my first baseball game. We had a lovely scavenger hunt, which was downtown in Raleigh, Chapel Hill. So we were placed in groups, got to know fellow international teachers. We also had a sip and paint night. We had a dance night, a beautiful buffet for the 4 days. And on the 5th day is where a bus would have taken us from where we were at the various hotels to our various cities or counties in which we were going to teach. And it is there my local advisor, who I had been speaking with from my home country, she would have picked me up, and we would have then started to engage in trying to settle into the community and life of teaching abroad. She was responsible for a few of us, so she would have taken us to the grocery. We would have went apartment shopping. I was fortunate, though, within the first week of arriving here, she had a friend who transferred, and she had her apartment that was available for 2 more weeks. So I and a fellow international teacher who was also new, we were able to stay there for a week. I stayed there for probably 5 days until I found my current residence and moved in, settled in, and then eventually went on to getting our social security, our driver's permit, our ID cards, and then of course quickly looking for vehicle for transport. Of course, every city, every state is different. In the city in which I live, the trains available are only trains that will take you state to state or neighboring cities. It is not a train like the subway station trains you may find in those big cities that will take you 2, 3 blocks away. The train system is not like that here. And of course, there are buses. But the best way for me to get to school would have been getting my own vehicle. So I was able to get that given the various letters I would have gotten from the program. Because when you come abroad, something you will learn quickly. You definitely need to have your social security. And of course, you need to have a good credit in order to get anything. But I was able to move on the strength of the program's letter in order to get the loan, to purchase the car, to lease the apartment. So that was something that was helpful, something that I didn't have to worry too much about. So there's a saying, begin with the end in mind. Maybe you have heard it before. And as I would have discussed prior, that's what I did in terms of taking this step. In the previous episode where I spoke with my friend, a fellow international teacher, she would have shared that if you make this decision to teach abroad, as much as there are many benefits, the best thing to do is to research, to have an idea as to the city or the state you'll be moving into, to know what are the practices there, to figure out maybe the cost of living and things like that before you decide if it's a good fit for you. When I spoke about beginning with the end in mind, I would have also shared with you all my personal journey in regards to who was I back home. You know, I was a teacher by day and, as I said, a baker by night. And of course, in coming to the US, I had to kill parts of my dream. But as I say, no regrets. I know what was my purpose. So, of course, I would have also shared with you all my passion. I wanted to rejuvenate that passion I had for teaching out of college, or maybe even before. I wanted to gain more experience and understanding and have a global view in education, as well as to develop more skills and have more enhanced teaching styles and practices that would enhance my professional development as a teacher going forward. So that was, of course, has been reached, that milestone has been reached, as well as I continue to strive to learn more. I would have shared previously the various courses I would have listened and learned and been certified in, being in the US. One of them in particular called Letters, which really helps you understand more so the science of reading. So aside from that, talking about the finances, as I spoke about in my previous video, Thriving in the US, you know, the ability to save, which was something I had challenges with back home. Even though I had my teaching job, I had my business, it still was difficult to make ends meet. So in this process, I was able to do that as well. So beginning with the end in mind, I am still thankful and blessed and happy and have no regrets that I took this step, because I was able to develop as a teacher, as well as be able to save what it is I needed to save and feel more comfortable in many ways. And as I would have talked about building a community, you know, getting to know people from different parts of the world. Like, I literally have 7 close friends, and 5 of them are from different parts of the world. And how unique is that? And that is such a blessing that, of course, would not have happened if I stayed in my home country. So all of those were some of the benefits. So I would say practical aspect, as this is mainly about, is do your research and know that it will have its challenges. However, I would say my sponsors were very helpful. They tried to keep us informed as possible. They made sure we were supported by making sure there was a local advisor here to support us. They always reach out to us by sending emails, by sending surveys to check in on how we are doing, by placing the local advisor in charge of us for that first year to make sure we are going fine. As well as I will definitely give credit to my administration, my persons at school, my colleagues at school, for the way they will check in on me, ask questions to see how I'm going, to provide me the necessary support I may have needed. So all of those things will also add into the fact that making this decision was certainly the right one. Another major point I wanted to address in terms of the practicality of moving to the US to figure out if it's for you is, I would say, look at the state, because I can't be specific, because of course all states will be different. When I would have came up with my sponsors in 2022, the 3 states they gave to me that was possible for me to teach in would have been South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. I did my research on the 3 states, and I chose North Carolina for many reasons. A big thing for me was nature. And it seems like also too with North Carolina, it has 3 various ranges. So it has the Piedmont region, the coastal plain, and the mountain region. And those aspects really appealed to me. Of course, so that was one of the reasons, as well as North Carolina was said to be a very easy state to live in terms of a low cost of living. So that was something I also looked at as it possibly being one of the best options. So cost of living is fairly reasonable within North Carolina. I can't be specific as to how much it may cost you, because of course everyone's family dynamics is different. But it was pretty affordable for me to live here, to be able to pay my bills and everything, and also be able to save. So that's another practical aspect. But I would say, of course, do your budget. Do know everything is taxed. So even though they may tell you whatever your salary will be, you will be taxed a percentage of that. You can cater anywhere from between 20 to 22, 23% in taxes. So whatever your salary is, do that so that you will have an idea, well, okay, this is how much I'm really going to be taking home in order to see if it will be enough to cover your bills. If you do come up here with a partner, a husband, that is another thing you have to factor in, because you are the J1, your husband will be the J2, as well as if you come up with kids, and your spouse can apply to possibly get a work permit. I don't know if they have necessarily denied anyone, but I know many persons who come up with their spouses were granted the work permit. So your spouse is able to work to help support. If your spouse comes with you and they decide to work, your spouse working is so that they can support themselves. So I want to be clear on that. So you will just, see what will work best for you if you're coming with family or if you're coming with just your kids. But as I said, it's been a remarkable experience in every way. And I do hope this video has been enlightening. It has been informative. And if you have any questions at all, please remember to leave the questions in the comments below and I will get back to them. Also, if there's anything you felt as though I have missed on this episode, please feel free as well to share in the comments. Maybe something you felt as though persons who may be considering this need to know before coming up here. So please feel free to share those in the comments as well. Thank you all again for joining us here for another episode of Beyond Borders Teaching. It's been a pleasure, and have a great week, everyone. Please remember to like, follow, share, and subscribe. And thank you all for tuning in again this week.